Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Hawk Blogger Mornings. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me and everything we do on this show on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram at Hawk Blogger. And if you like the audio versions, you can get those at Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Really, wherever you get your audio podcast, it should be available. And if you like ad-free audio, you can get that at patreon.com/hawkblogger, which also gets you access to the Discord server where people are hanging out, talking about Seahawks and all sorts of things, even the Mariners right now as spring training's underway. All that over on the Discord server. And I am, as you can tell, kind of playing it fast and loose with when we're going to do the shows this week, because it feels a little silly to do a show in the morning when we did one last night and not a bunch changed and you just feel like news is going to be breaking. So I am kind of playing around with when is the best time to do the show each day, and appreciate all of you who join at all hours and make this somehow the number one Seahawks podcast on the planet for the number one football team on the planet, your world champion Seattle Seahawks. And sure enough, waited long enough today. There was a decent amount of news. And if you're just joining, if you're just hearing this, it's good news for once. The Seahawks have re-signed Drake Thomas, the linebacker, to a 2-year deal, reportedly worth $8 million, could be worth as much as $9 million. And this was first reported by Ian Rappaport. And, you know, I tweeted and immediately when I saw it that this is a good deal for Thomas. It's below the second round tender and it's above the ROFL tender. And the first reply was, "Can someone translate what Brian means?" And so let me be a good reporter here, I guess, and give a little bit more information. So Drake Thomas was one of the seven restricted free agents the Seahawks had on their roster. And I went over these guys in the restricted free agent show I did earlier this week and why there were some big decisions that the Seahawks had to make. The way that restricted free agency works is that you have different levels of tenders that you can apply to a player in order to keep them as a restricted free agent. You can also choose to apply no tender at all and say, you know what, we're not going to tender you. That means you become an unrestricted free agent. That is reportedly what's going to happen with Jake Bobo, who was reported by, I think it was Jeremy Fowler earlier this week, that they do not anticipate the Seahawks using a tender on Jake Bobo, which takes him from an RFA, restricted free agent, to a UFA, an unrestricted free agent. So with Drake Thomas, he was clearly the most valuable of the restricted free agents the Seahawks had on their list. And the lowest tender that you can apply to a restricted free agent is called the right of first refusal tender, ROFR, right? And that tender this year cost $3.5 million. If you apply that tender to an RFA, then that person can negotiate with any other team. And if they come back with a deal that you don't want to match, then they leave and you get no compensation for them leaving. All that buys you, all that right of first refusal tender buys you is the right to refuse to match the deal. Now, Seahawks have had history where teams have written some crazy contract language. The Steve Hutchinson poison pill, the most famous one, where maybe they wanted to match, but they couldn't. And so it is a little bit risky. I don't think it's quite as risky as it was back then because they've changed some things, but it felt unlikely to me that the Seahawks would be comfortable letting Drake Thomas go out and negotiate with only a right of first refusal tender. That felt risky. So what's the next level up from that? Well, since Drake Thomas was an undrafted free agent, you don't have the option of doing the original round tender because he wasn't drafted. So there's no round, which takes you up to the next level, which is the second round tender. The second round tender means that if you apply that to your restricted free agent, if they sign with another team and you don't match it, you get a second round pick in return, right? Much bigger deal than right of first refusal. It also costs more. That second round tender is $5.8 million. So why did I say this was a good deal for Drake Thomas? Makes sense for the Seahawks. And why did I say it was in between? Well, I already explained I don't think it made sense for the Seahawks to risk just a right of first refusal tender on Drake Thomas. He's a starter. He's young. He's up and coming. I think he's a Pro Bowl caliber linebacker. To get nothing in return didn't make sense. Drake Thomas's agent also understood that most likely and was like, we're not going to take $3.5 million per year because otherwise just apply that tender, which you're not going to want to do. So it was more than $3.5 million a year, but it was less than $5.8 million a year, which is a second round tender. I don't think the Seahawks wanted to place a second round tender on Drake Thomas. That's a bit rich. And $5.8 million against the cap would have been used. Like, yeah, you get it back once you negotiate a deal, but it puts essentially a hold on what's almost $6 million in cap space, which I don't think the Seahawks like. They generally don't want to have cap holds. They want contracts. That's why the Seahawks tend to sign their RFAs before they ever hit the market, because they'd rather know exactly how much cap they have to work with. Makes sense. So in this case, $4 million per year with a chance to be worth as much as $4.5 million per year APY if he reaches some incentives that we don't know about yet. And that is a nice big jump for Drake Thomas, who has not made that kind of money yet in his career. Allows him to still get out to free agency when he's 28. I think Drake Thomas, if I am correct, is 26 right now. Yes, he's 26. He literally just turned 26 and 8 days. His birthday was February 25th. So happy belated birthday, Drake Thomas. So this allows him to go back out on the market as an unrestricted free agent in 2 years. 28 years old. If he has the seasons I think he and I and others expect from him, he will get a pretty penny at that point. So there is the kind of explanation of why the number came in where it came in, why it makes sense that that's the number. And then as far as the player, I mean, let's remember the player for a second. Like, this is a guy that John Schneider claimed from the Raiders during cutdown day. I think it was 2 years ago, if I remember correctly. 2023. So 3 years ago, 3 seasons ago. And he got hurt his first season. He came back for Mike McDonald's first year. He was late to come into training camp. Somehow did enough late in that training camp for John Schneider or for Mike McDonald to see it himself to convince Mike to keep him on the 53-man roster, which was a surprise to me because he came so late into training camp. But he barely played in his first season with Mike McDonald. And so you get to this season and he was in somewhat of a rotation with Tyrese Knight. And part of what happened is Tyrese Knight was injured during preseason. And that opened the door for Drake Thomas to get a lot more reps. Well, that was to his benefit, not as much to Tyrese Knight's benefit. And to his credit, he took full advantage of it. Drake Thomas ended up last season with 96 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 6 quarterback hits, an interception, a fumble recovery, 3.5 sacks. Like, he filled up the stat line. And to give you some idea of like how impressive it was what he did, there aren't a lot of inside linebackers that have had 3.5 sacks, 10 tackles for loss, at least 6 quarterback hits, and an interception in a season. Like, of recent years, like Kind of funny. Drake Thomas and Tyrell Dodson are the only two inside linebackers that did that last year in the entire NFL. You go back to 2024, Edge Cooper did it, who was an excellent rookie that year. Frankie Louvu, who was a big free agent signing for the Commanders, did it. You kind of keep going back. Demario Davis did it in 2022. Frankie Louvu did it again. Bobby Wagner did it in 2022 with the Rams, as a case may be. Roquan Smith did it in 2020. For the most part, these are pretty big names. And to have Drake Thomas at $4.5 million or $4 million for the next 2 years, to give you some idea like of where that falls on the inside linebacker contracts. I mean, Ernest Jones signed last year for the Seahawks with an average per year of $9.5 million. And that is 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. That's 17th on the inside linebacker list. So you're talking about getting down to $4.5 million or let's say $4 million. Like Isaiah McDuffie makes $4 million. Mac Wilson for the Cardinals makes 4.25. Jelani Tavai for the Patriots, who's 30 years old, makes 5.3. You can kind of keep going up this list. Cody Barton, for God's sakes, for the Titans makes $7 million. Blake Cashman for the Vikings makes 7.5. You've got those are some decent players like in Blake Cashman. Nate Landman just signed a deal for $7.5 million. And so to have Drake Thomas for the next 2 years at that price is a steal. It just is. I don't know that there's many inside linebackers who aren't on their rookie deals that are better bargains than what Drake Thomas will be for that price. And I think he's just getting started. I think he's just getting started. I think this guy is going to be a Pro Bowl linebacker. I think his ability to knife into the backfield, make plays, read plays. This is a guy that every time I went into the locker room, he was buried in his iPad reviewing film. I talked to Ernest Jones about Drake Thomas, and he's like, that guy makes me feel like I should be studying more because he's just always looking for an edge, and it shows up. He plays with that kind of confidence that he sees something and he just fires his gun and goes after it. So, yeah, I think this is a really, really good deal for the Seahawks, a really good deal for Drake Thomas. It's a win-win. And one of the things this kind of brings up for me as I kind of reflect on it is you now got Ernest Jones and Drake Thomas, pretty clearly your two starting linebackers for the next couple of years. Tyrese Knight is a starting caliber linebacker. He might not be your starter, but he is a starting caliber linebacker. You've got Patrick O'Connell behind him, who might be a starting caliber linebacker. Now you've got Jamie Sheriff behind him, who I don't know as much because I haven't seen as much of him as an off-ball linebacker, but I know the team is pretty high on him. You've got a little bit of a pile at inside linebacker, which is ironic considering a lot of us thought that was a position group that the team did not address as much as they should have last year. Shows what we know. And it makes me wonder if any of those guys will be dangled in any kind of trade. Like, does Tyrese Knight become a player in a deal? I don't know if Patrick O'Connell would really probably net much, but Tyrese Knight for me is an interesting one because that guy is so talented. I don't think he belongs on the bench. And he might have like this really positive situation. The 49ers for years, they had Dre Greenlaw and Fred Warner. And then you had, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the guy that went to Houston. Starts with an A. Aziz Al-Shair, right? So you had like this linebacker crew that was there that were all really, really quality, talented players, and they weren't all able to start. I don't know that this is that level of like surplus of talent, but there is a little bit of a pile there, and you only play two of those guys at once. And often you're taking one of them off the field sometimes if you're going to go into dime. So it does make me wonder a little bit if there's a surplus there that they'll utilize a different way. And I see people in chat also mentioning players that were not on the 53-man roster, like Chris Paul Jr., who was, I think, a really promising player, and they claimed from the Rams last year. There are other guys on that list as well. So it is a position of depth, and it is a question to me about whether that depth is best used on the roster or whether it's best used trying to package that and maybe find a buyer that would find that value interesting for something else, somewhere else on your roster. Now, that isn't the only news of the day, and I'll come back to it because I want to luxuriate a little bit in Drake Thomas numbers. I want to do a couple searches and see if we can find some things. I already did a couple things, but I want to see. Well, I'll do it right now. I'm going to do one quick search right now, which is when's the last time a Seahawk linebacker did what Drake Thomas did? And let's do this. Interesting. So there's only been 3 linebackers in Seahawks history, and none of them were really inside linebackers other than Drake Thomas. Julian Peterson played for the Seahawks, played for the 49ers, by the way, as well. But he was more of an edge player. He's more of an outside linebacker for the Seahawks. He's the only other Seahawk linebacker to ever have at least 3.5 sacks, at least 10 tackles for loss, and at least 1 interception in the same season other than Drake Thomas. So in Drake Thomas's first year getting the majority of the snaps as a starter, he did something that no other Seahawks inside linebacker has ever done. Now, I will caution or add a little caveat, which is these databases and these places where I search, tackles for loss as a stat probably doesn't go back quite as far. Could be, only certain years that it actually shows up, but still, it's a rare occurrence for what Drake Thomas did last year, and a good sign. All right, so I see questions in chat, and I'll talk to some of those in a second. As far as I'm concerned, there's no real new news on Rashid Shaheed. We talked about that yesterday. Yes, he did post a picture, like the Mike Scott from The Office picture, tearing up in response to the Seahawks posting the NFC Championship banner that was hanging. And yeah, I think there are some pretty strong signs he's not coming back. We already talked about that. I don't think that that's going to change. Nothing new there. We also talked about the fact that it's pretty unlikely that Ken Walker's coming back at this point. I don't think there's any new news there as well. So what is new news? Well, I continue to be on the Maxx Crosby watch for a lot of reasons. And I realize a lot of people aren't, or they think it's a bad idea, or a million other reasons. I believe it makes sense for the Seahawks to go after Maxx Crosby because I think that is the biggest area that the Seahawks could change their outcome and change their calculus for next season. And in particular, I believe it shows up really when going up against the Rams and Matt Stafford. I thought that the pass rush was not sufficient in those games, and you need alpha level edge rushers. And by the way, I don't think Jonathan Grenard is an alpha level edge rusher that wins on his own on a regular enough basis to totally change the calculation and change the equation with the Rams. Do I think it would help? Yes. I'm not out on Jonathan Grenard, but I don't think it's really a question between him and Maxx Crosby who would have the bigger impact. Now, the cost is different as well, which we've talked about. But there has been some movement at least reported, relative to Maxx Crosby. Some of it direct, some of it indirect. So throughout the day, we've got word from, Jordan Schultz. We've got word from, a number of different people that there's movement on Maxx Crosby, and that people believe that now the Raiders are willing to make the move. And so things have kind of heated up. Okay. We've also seen, interestingly, Lane Johnson, the right tackle for the Eagles, tweet at Maxx Crosby with the eyes emoji. Now, players sometimes do know things before front office people. Sometimes they don't. And it does make me wonder. The Raiders are in need of a top receiver. We know the Eagles are shopping A.J. Brown. I think it can make a lot of sense for the Eagles and the Raiders to make a deal that included A.J. Brown and Maxx Crosby. I believe the Eagles would have to include more than A.J. Brown to make that deal happen. But that could be something that would make some sense for both teams, because the Eagles' edge rush was not that good last year, and Maxx Crosby certainly would help that team. And we know that Howie Roseman has paid a premium for pass rush and defensive line play for years. So that's something. Don't know if it's anything that's going to turn into reality, but that's one bit. Trey Wingo tweeted, "Things are moving fast." This was 3 hours ago. "Things are moving fast with Maxx Crosby. Last night, Dallas thought they were close to a deal, but since then, other teams have raised the ante and potentially are offering the Raiders 2 first-round picks. It's expected that Dallas is now going to shift their focus to Trey Hendrickson." Now, again, Trey Wingo, don't know for sure how credible that is, but it's more credible than other folks that are tweeting about sources they have that don't have sources. So that's interesting. I think part of what I take from that is what I already predicted at the beginning of this week, which was this deal is going to happen. I've been convinced it was going to happen. I thought it would happen either today or tomorrow. I said it would be late in the week because the Raiders are going to wait as long as they can to get the best offer that they can. And that's kind of what's happening. Teams are upping the ante, and we'll see, at least based on that report. There was another tweet earlier. Honestly, I don't think I have it handy, but it was basically a tweet that kind of implied that the Raiders hadn't yet really gotten the offer they're looking for. That's not what the tweet said, but the interpretation for anyone that follows the NFL and interprets these things was the Raiders were pushing this news out there that they really are trying to move Maxx Crosby, but the offers haven't met their bar yet. So I think that they're going to start hitting up against the deadline for them, because the Raiders want to know what cap space they have to work with so that they can get into planning their free agency, which is starting in just a few days. From there, this is where it gets a little indirect, and this is follow me for a second here. So earlier today, there was a trade made by the Chicago Bears and the Buffalo Bills, where they traded the Bears traded wide receiver DJ Moore to the Bills. And the compensation for this deal was kind of wild, to be honest. The Bills got DJ Moore and a 5th-round pick. In exchange, Chicago got a 2nd-round pick. I don't think anybody thought the Bears would get a 2nd-round pick for DJ Moore. I like DJ Moore. I think he's a good player. I know he had some tough times in Chicago. He's a pretty electric receiver, but he's not worth a 2nd-round pick at this point. especially because the Bills also had to pay DJ Moore. He has a huge contract. So I don't understand why the Bills gave up as much as they gave up. I will also, just from a quick aside on the Bills' perspective, everyone's like, oh, look at Josh Allen's got a great new target. And it's true. But does he defend the run? Because if he doesn't, it wasn't Josh Allen in the offense that was really the biggest problem with the Bills this past season. It was their run defense and their defense in general. So I don't know how DJ Moore helps that, at least, specific, like directly. But in any event, my interpretation of that deal was Chicago's clearing cap space, and Chicago just got another second-round pick. They now have 2 second-round picks within a few picks of each other this year. And my read of that was the Bears are loading up, they're clearing cap room to fit a big addition, and they've got some additional draft capital to include. See, Chicago was already, if not the favorite, depending on where you looked, one of the favorites to land Maxx Crosby. So I kind of had been resigned to the notion that Maxx Crosby was going to go to the Bears. Like, that seemed logical to me. I thought the Cowboys were maybe the most likely, and it seemed like for a while they were. Then I was like, it's probably going to be the Bears. But Adam Schefter, just a few hours ago, was on ESPN radio in Chicago. And he said, quote, I would be surprised if Maxx Crosby ends up in Chicago. Interesting. So let's for a second take that at its face value to be true. If that's true, if the Cowboys are out, if they've pivoted to Trey Hendrickson, if the Bears are not the team that's going to go after Maxx Crosby, then it starts to get a little bit more interesting for your Seattle Seahawks. And the word is that the Bears or the Cowboys did not want to include 2 first-round picks. I'm telling you, the Seahawks are going to be willing, I think, to do that because they've got pick 32 this year, and they could have a pick 32 next year if they make the deal for Crosby. They legitimately could. Those are not that valuable. We've seen the Rams do this over years where they basically have said, if it's not a top 10, top 15 pick, teams are probably overvaluing first-round picks, and you can get more by getting a good player for that late first-round pick than sticking and picking at 32. We can debate that another time. But let's just assume that for a second, that there's no question about Maxx Crosby being a very good player. There's some question about his health and durability, but I think that's a little bit overstated as well. If you get Maxx Crosby for 2 first-round picks, I will be here telling you it's a great deal. Now, is it a risk? Absolutely. Has John Schneider swung and missed when he's gone big with some of these types of trades, especially trading first-round picks? Absolutely. But I think you also have to look at the opportunity cost. Like, what are you really giving up? Yes, I think there's probably some players at 32 that could end up being good starting players. Like, let's say Colton Hood, a common mocked player to the Seahawks at 32, becomes a good starting cornerback. That's really valuable. And you've got him on a rookie deal. Super valuable. I don't think that raises the level of your team from what it was last year to what it would be next year. In some ways, you have to wonder if it's even treading water with where you were last year. I personally happen to believe the Seahawks' next news, if it's not a Crosby trade, will be Josh Jobs signing. I think Josh Jobs the next domino to fall for the Seahawks. And if they do that, then they've got their starting defense pretty much in place. But if you trade for Maxx Crosby, there's no question in my mind that your ability, your odds to be the next the repeat Super Bowl winner, raise by more than any other single move you could make. I don't think there's another move. If you trade for Jonathan Grenard and it's a day 2 pick, it's a second or third round pick, and you get another first round, like that could all be good. It is not a paradigm shift. If you if you get Maxx Crosby, every other fan in the NFL, but especially in the NFC West, will be in mourning. They will, whatever they'll say cope-wise, they will be in distress. Because the notion of Mike Macdonald having the ability to run Maxx Crosby, Byron Murphy, Leonard Williams, DeMarcus Lawrence, Jaron Reed, Riley Mills, potentially Derek Hall if he's still around, like running those guys out there, however he chooses to deploy them, it would be cinema. It would be the most fun. Like, and we just watched them win a Super Bowl, but you get that collection of defensive line talent from the edge to the inside. Watch out. Watch out. So that's why I will continue to talk about this until there's nothing to talk about anymore. And the good news for you, if you're sick of this topic, is this should resolve itself within probably 24 hours. Maybe it'll leak into the weekend. But I think that's likely the timeline, is in the next 24 hours. And yes, I see it in chat. People are like, stop talking about it. It's not going to happen. You know, good thing for me. It's my show. I'll talk about whatever I feel like talking about. And I genuinely believe this has a legitimate shot of happening, or I wouldn't be talking about it. I would not be wasting time on it. Now, do I think it's the most likely outcome? No. The Seahawks do not have the ammunition that other teams do. So, yeah, and I get it. There's people out there that are like, yeah, but you can get Grenard for less. There's people out there like, oh, you can sign Khalil Mack at 36 years old, 35 years old, whatever he is. Yeah, there are backup plans, but they're backup for a reason. So, yeah, that's kind of where things stand, I believe, on the Maxx Crosby front. I could be back on here in an hour with this news actually getting resolved, but more likely could be next year or next tomorrow. Sorry, I was looking at a tweet that said year. It could be Friday. So we'll see about that. Let me see if there's anything else that I wanted to cover before I check for any super chats or other questions. Think so. I don't think so. Like, it is, I mean, people are watching as like the Vikings are letting go of a lot of the players that they signed because of salary cap issues. You know, you've got the Commanders had to let go of their center. You've got a bunch of teams having to deal with just releasing players because of poor cap management. The Seahawks, thankfully, are not in that category. Yeah, I'm just looking through seeing if there's anything else I missed before turning over to questions from you guys. So I do not see any super chats, at least not there. Let me check Venmo real quick. See if there's anything there. And you can get, if you have not done a Venmo super chat and you want to, venmo.com/Brian-Nemhauser. And all you have to do is leave your question as a comment on your Venmo, and I will treat it as a super chat. 12 for life just gave a nice, not really a super chat, but appreciation for me making sure that he got credit for the pre-agency idea, which I will try to remember to continue. It definitely happened on this show, and it was really It's a great pull from you, 12 for life. So thank you for the super chat, or at least the gratitude there. People want me to do a mock draft. I don't know. I'm not feeling a mock draft today. I still got a sick kid at home, so I'm trying to be pretty brief with my shows and make sure I'm available to help out with him. Let me see if there's other things here. I'm just gonna scroll back through. Let's see. I see someone's just like F them comp picks. Well, the funny thing with the comp picks is if you trade for Maxx Crosby, it doesn't affect the comp pick formula. If you trade for Grenard, it doesn't affect that formula either. If you sign Khalil Mack, it does. If you sign Tyler Algier, the running back, it does. So I think that they do care about comp picks this year. I know Jeff doesn't like the comp picks, but I think if you can get a third round comp pick, I think John Schneider with a third round pick is a lot better than the 49ers front office with a comp pick. So I see someone here asking about what about Jalen Phillips? That would affect comp picks, and he's going to be very expensive. I don't see the Seahawks going out and spending big money in free agency on an edge rusher like Trey Hendrickson, Jalen Phillips. Like, I don't think either of those guys are necessarily the guys that you go and spend big free agent dollars on. Let me just see if there's anything else here. This is kind of yep, we got someone asking if my thoughts on Schefter saying the Bears are likely not for Crosby. I mean, if the Bears are clearing this cap space for another reason, maybe they're going to go after Tyler Linderbaum, the center, because their center, Drew Dahlman, who they just spent a bunch of money on last year in free agency, is retiring, which is wild. He's in his 20s. So maybe, but I would kind of be surprised if they go back to free agency and spend again on that position, but it is very valuable. Tizo TD says, am I the only one who wouldn't mind Rico Dowdle? I didn't love Rico Dowdle in general, and I definitely didn't like the way he handled his situation in Carolina. He was pretty mouthy about mouthy is the wrong word. He was vocal. He was vocal about not being used, and he was hesitant about whether he was come back based on how he was going to be used. And I don't know. I just didn't get a great vibe that he's a good fit for this locker room and for the Seahawks. And I'm also not really sure that he's an upgrade over what they've already got. I like George Halani. I like Velus Jones. I like Jacardier Wright. Kenny McIntosh is recovering from an injury. If he can recover, then he's interesting. Not as big on Cam Akers, but he's fine as well. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think Rico Dowdle's would be my cup of tea. Let's see. Other questions. Thoughts on pursuing Adafe Owe? I mean, Mike McDonald knows him. If they go after him, then that would be a good sign. But I just don't see the Seahawks spending on edge. This might be confusing. You're like, why would you trade 2 first-round picks and not go spend on an edge? Because you're going to have to spend on Maxx Crosby if he's here. Well, I don't know that the edge players in free agency are such perfect fits and the right price that the Seahawks are going to get the return on that investment there. Like, if you spend top dollar on a free agent edge rusher, likely they're not going to be as good as they're not going to be returning what you're paying. Crosby, now, other than injury, he's going to be worth what he costs. And the other piece here is it's a decent edge class in the draft. So if they don't get Crosby, I think they'd most likely pivot to prioritizing edge in the draft, as opposed to maybe they pivot to Grenard. Maybe there's some other edge available via trade. But I think it's kind of a Crosby by itself kind of situation. Part of the reason is we know that they've gone after Crosby at least 2 times before, and they didn't go after someone else. Like, they didn't then pivot to a different edge. They just stopped. So I think that they are after Maxx Crosby, and they will be after him until they either get him or someone else does. And I'll point out that John Schneider, when he kind of picks a player, a lot of times he ends up with that player. I mean, all the way back to Marshawn Lynch, where he was bugging the Bills about Marshawn Lynch for months, and they were like, no deal, no deal, no deal. They finally got a deal done. Most recently, Rashid Shaheed, no deal, no deal, no deal. Got a deal done. Leonard Williams, no deal, no deal, no deal. Got a deal done. So, like, John Schneider, I don't think if he strikes out once, if he strikes out twice, he often doesn't strike out the third time or fourth time or fifth time, and he doesn't stop. So that's part of why, for me, there's a lot of evidence that this is real. This is not just to get clicks. And by the reaction of some people, it might not even get clicks because they're sick of the topic. So, yeah. Question here. Leaves Dallas, LA, Seattle, New England, and who else for Crosby? Well, I don't really know who the list is, but it sounds like Dallas might be out. I think the Rams are probably in. They still have one of their first round picks, the 13th overall. They also have Byron Young. Don't know if they will pull the trigger on that. I think the Eagles make some sense. They definitely need help on that line. Get this question from a member here, Cocanelius. Are we still considering Thibodeau? Well, I don't know that we were ever considering Thibodeau. I was considering Thibodeau. I don't know that the Seahawks ever have. And in fact, there's been some evidence that the Seahawks were not super high on him coming out, and that could color their desire to go get him now. Question here, if there's any new thoughts on K9 and Shaheed. Nope. I think they're both leaving. That's the thought. Matt in Beaverton says, do you guys think Cam Jordan has enough in the tank for 1 year of ring chasing? I do not. I think Cam Jordan, who is going to hit free agency for the first time, I think he's done. Now, can he be a rotational guy that helps a little bit? Sure, but I don't think he's even DeMarcus Lawrence level. I don't believe in that. Thoughts on Josh Sweat? I don't understand this unless for some reason the Cardinals are making him available. That would be shocking. Maybe I missed some news there. Scrolling through. Yeah, I've already mentioned the Cam Jordan, not a believer at 36, whatever he is, years old. I thought he really degraded. He used to be fantastic. I just don't think he's that player or close to it anymore. So the only area we're looking to improve is defense when that was our strongest area to begin with. I don't think that's how to look at it. The way I look at roster building in general, and I think the way teams do as well, is who can you add that makes you a better team? Like who is the biggest difference by adding? And you look at it. Actually, it's a philosophy that goes into management and leadership as well, not just for roster management, but a lot of first-time managers, they focus on their weakest performers, and they spend all this time trying to get low performers to be mediocre performers, when all the data and research shows that you're much better off spending your time with your high performers and getting them to perform at their best and making sure that they're happy and engaged. It's not that much different than how you manage a roster. Like there is no amount of pass rush that's too much. It doesn't exist. And if you want to know the things that ultimately win Super Bowls most often, quarterback, coach, pass rush. Those are the three things. Now, those aren't the only things, but those are the predominant things that determine who wins in the end. And I think the Seahawks are in great shape with coach. They're certainly not going to make any changes at quarterback. Pass rush was good, but at times disappeared. Now, it was great in the Super Bowl. It wasn't great in the NFC Championship. It wasn't great against the Rams in 2 of the 3 games. And so that was a part of this defense, as good as it was, that at times was not a factor. And to have a team that's so interior dominant in terms of where their pass rush comes from, it's not ideal to only have interior pass rush. If you can only choose one, I'd take interior. But the Seahawks just have not yet unlocked a true edge rush. So I think that this is the biggest. This isn't like take what was already strong and make it stronger. I think this is taking an area that was good and making it great. And I think that that's going to make a huge difference for this team. I think that affects offense even. I think it's going to create more turnovers, short fields. It's going to lower the bar for all sorts of things that help this team out. Now, if the biggest move the Seahawks could make was, I don't know, left tackle, like if that was really a big glaring hole for them and there was a chance to get much better, we'd be having a different conversation. But I don't even think getting a marginally better right guard, which is probably for everybody a big to-do item, I don't think that makes that big of a difference, to be honest. I think it would help, but I don't think it changes the calculus of where the Seahawks are as a contender. Think about the other positions. Cornerback, maybe. I think you're going to get Josh Jobe back. And if you get Josh Jobe back, you've got your starting secondary from last year. Wide receiver, maybe, but I wouldn't spend free agent dollars on wide receiver. I would look elsewhere, or I would look at get one of these guys that was released by their teams. The guy from Atlanta, what is it, Mooney? I can't remember. Anyway, I think it's whatever. It's not loading. It doesn't want to load. So I don't think receiver is the biggest place you can make a difference. I honestly think this is the biggest place that you can make a difference with this team. So that's where my mind goes. Got a question here. Wouldn't Crosby only make sense if D-Law retires? No. You're losing Boye Mafe. If you're replacing Boye Mafe with Maxx Crosby and everything else stays the same, guess what? It's a pretty big upgrade. And in fact, I think getting Maxx Crosby could help you keep DeMarcus Lawrence. He might want to play with that guy another year if he's considering retirement. Question here. Are we doing our draft show like usual? Yes, we will do our live draft show. I should be at the VMAC for that, I believe. Now, if they don't have a first round pick, I don't know if I'm going to go down there and do a live show for the whole first round of the Seahawks not making a pick. Probably not, but who knows? We'll see. Is Travis Helani a possible backfield next year? Maybe, but I don't think Charbonnet is going to be available to start the year. I would be surprised if he is. Certainly wouldn't build an offseason plan around that. I see this question about what if the Hawks try to sign Linderbaum and then move Sundell to the guard on the right side? There's almost zero chance they're going to spend that kind of money on an external free agent to begin with. And they like Jalen Sundell at center. He played really well and he was improving and he's young and he's like Gray Zabel's buddy who plays right next to him. Like, I think there's a lot of reasons to think that chemistry is only going to grow. And the thing with Jalen Sundell is, yes, he can play guard, but his biggest issue is that he can be overpowered at center. Usually guys that are at risk of being overpowered at center really struggle at guard, where power is a much bigger part of the equation. So I don't think Jalen Sundell moving to guard is the best idea. I think it's going to be everybody stays exactly where they are, and you open competition for right guard as you did last offseason. And if Bryce Cabledew or Mason Richmond or Christian Haynes or maybe a drafted player beats out Anthony Bradford, then so be it. And if they don't, then so be it. And people are just going to have to pound sand because the team likes what Anthony Bradford did. Oh my gosh. This question about Juwan Jennings, where is this rumor coming from? I will not be a fan of that move. If that gets made, I will not be a fan of that move. I've respected that Juwan Jennings is one of the most fierce blockers at the receiver position. That I do respect. How he generally handled himself with the 49ers, not so much. And to bring in like another, not like a slow blocking, run blocking possession receiver, I think you don't need, like, you had Jake Bobo and Cooper Kupp and Derek Young, who's not really slow, but anyway, like, you had that kind of player. I don't think you need another one of those players. So I don't see it as additive, and it could be a negative depending on how he fits into that locker room. So I really hope that rumor is just a rumor. Thoughts on 2 first and Bradford for Crosby? No, they're not going to take Anthony Bradford for Crosby in that deal. And I don't think they're going to sign Linderbaum. So, like, I don't know why everyone's going through so many hoops to replace Anthony Bradford at right guard when you just won a Super Bowl with him. And he played like reasonably well. He did not play well in the Super Bowl, but he played reasonably well the back half of the season. So I think people have been watching way too many low light reels. People asking about, is Trey Hendrickson a thought? No, I don't think he's a thought. I don't think he was ever in. They were ever in on him last year. Got a super chat from Colin Lundstrom. Do you think Sam Darnold will look for a revised deal and extension? He might look for one. He's not going to get one. John Schneider was very clear on this at the combine that he signed a 3-year deal. He's got 2 more years on that deal, and John Schneider does not negotiate extensions until you're on the last year of his deal. So he's not going to happen. John Hurlbut. Hey, John, good to see you, dude. He has gifted 5 Hawk Blogger memberships. Great to see you here, and nice that you are doing that. If you get one of these free memberships, consider upgrading to a club level. It gets you access to the Discord server, or just gifting some yourself. Pay it forward. Give it to somebody else so they can get part of this community. All right. I think that we've got a little empty super chat here from Zahir Boyd. Thanks for that. So yeah, I think people are going to get enamored with external free agents. I don't think the Seahawks are going to be particularly active in external free agency. I think they're going to try to sign their own guys. I think they're going to extend their own guys. I think Derek Hall extension would be really smart if they could get that done. You're already going to have 40 million plus for JSN, 30 million plus for Devin Witherspoon. You've already signed Charles Cross and Abe Lucas to extensions. Josh Jobe will probably get signed. The money starts to run out. And then I think you look at some trade options. We'll see. But sorry, getting some funny news here. Yeah. So that will, I think, end most of this. Is from Matt and Beaverton. This is for range balls. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I actually went and tried to golf today. Weather said it was going to hold. The rain was going to hold off. It did not hold off. So I bailed after like 5 holes. It's okay. I was not hitting the ball well off the tee anyway. I had 2 great tee shots and then a lot of not great tee shots. Jalen Mossman says, bought your book. Love it, man. Well, thank you. If you haven't got the book, We Did Not Care. You can get it at hawkblogger.com/book. And I'm still looking to figure out some more book signings. We'll figure that out soon. I know people are hoping to get some book signings. I will do my best to make that possible. All right, folks. Someone asked about Travis Etienne. I'm not a I like Algier a lot more. Etienne's fine. I think he's like a slightly above average starter. Algier to me has upside of being Pro Bowl level. Like, I think he's got that kind of upside kind of lurking in there behind Bijan Robinson. But like, he's the only guy that to me perks me up when I look at the running back room, like the running back list. And he is an external free agent, and it would count against comp picks. He might be worth it. But honestly, I mean, this is why I was a fan of signing Ken Walker. I think Ken Walker is in a tier by himself. Breece Hall was in that tier. He got franchised. So, yeah, there's not another Ken Walker out there, I don't think. Justin Burns says, your book is awesome. So cool to see it at Costco. That's really nice of you. Thanks, man. I'm glad you like it. And someone said they ordered the book yesterday. Excited for it to come in the mail. Cool. I really, really appreciate everybody giving some positive feedback. Not everybody gives positive feedback, and that's fine too. All right, everybody, that'll do it for this edition of Hawkblogger Mornings in the afternoon. If there is something else that comes up, I'll be back here. But until then, that'll do it. Take care. Have a great rest of your Thursday.